rehabilitation and rehabilitation of young offenders between 18 to 21 years in Tihar prisons. We have recently showcased the outcome of our 3-year crusade in a webinar which was held on 26th August 2020, which maybe some of you might have had the chance to participate or seen the recorded version where we spoke about our project in Tihar. And we are highly privileged to have Mr. Goel present, DG presents right now with us. I'm sorry, can I please request everyone to today's webinar, Tracking of Restorative Justice Growth in India, where the deliberations will bring out the emerging applications and scope of restorative justice in India. So without wasting much time, I think I'll just quickly ask our founder chairperson, Dr. UNV Rao, to start the program. Introduce you quickly our very wonderful chairman. Dr. Rao, UNV Rao, after having done his MSc degree in applied geology, joined Police established in 1991 Yurvi Vikram Charitable Trust, a national level NGO, in memory of his only son who died at the age of 20 years in a road accident. After superannuation from Indian Police Services in September 2005, he continued as secretary to Soli Swaraj.
And one wonders, where is it is just daily social issues. Friends, when we talk of restorative justice, I try to understand what it is, and I ultimately feel it is a utopian concept in present India. It is a system where we are expecting to put the culprit, victim, and the community together in order to obtain an amicable settlement. Well, will that be possible in India? But it needs to be achieved gradually or as soon as possible. After all, in India, we are having almost like 2 crores of cases under trial pending in the courts, 2 crores. And every year we are adding 2 lakhs. Out of the 2 lakhs what we are adding in a year, only 50% are getting settled by the end of the year. That means the pendency is continuous. Research concentrates on the inequalities in various areas.
Trying to answer the 5 pertinent questions, the 5 W's and the 1 H. So what is restorative justice? Why now restorative justice? And where did this restorative justice originate? And when can restorative justice be used? Determines exactly what each participant in the trial gets, involving the therapeutic treatment for offenders as well, and procedural justice, which determines how fairly people are treated and the procedure of the justice. And of course, the retributive justice, which we all are aware of. So it's based on punishment for wrongdoing. So it is in this context that Eglan spoke about restorative justice. And like the name suggests, it restores relationships, and it's based on inputs from both the victims and the offenders. So since 77, a lot of water has flowed under the bridge, and then finally the UN has recognized restorative justice as a way to give holistic justice. So we have international instruments that promote now that they ask for a change in the way justice is delivered. So in this sense, we suddenly looked at restorative justice. So we're looking at the traditional model of the retributive justice, where you have the offender and the state pitted against each other. Now we're moving on to a more inclusive restorative justice model, where we want to include the victim in the process, we want to include the society in the process, and we want to kind of make it more inclusive. So when we are trying to do this, what we must remember is when we bring a victim or we bring the society into the system, we must realize and must acknowledge that this criminal justice system is very, very intimidating, and it's not at all victim friendly, if I may. And it is not welcoming as well. So we see the process even for us people in the criminal justice system itself working. We see how complicated it is. The entry into the system, the prosecution and the pre-trial work and the adjudication and the sentencing and the correction. So it's a very, very complicated system and not very welcoming. So we should remember that we are welcoming people into the system which is very complicated and not and intimidating as well. So we need to make it friendly and make it more welcoming. So we need to understand and make them understand the different wings of the criminal justice system, how the law is made and the enforcement, the citizens, the cops and the judiciary, how it works, and the correctional wing. And after spend 2 hours there every day as a volunteer. So he realizes the impact of his action of riding a bike carelessly without a license. And the parents were also in a way to be blamed. So because they gave him a bike when he was not yet ready with a license and he was an underage juvenile. So they were also involved and they were also asked to take care of the treatment of that little child in the hospital. And this boy had to spend his weekend in the observation home. That's where we had the juvenile justice board, and there they have boys who are schooling there, and being a government institution, the teachers are the best of teachers. So we had this boy come and volunteer in weekends and teach those young boys, standard 5, standard 6, whatever. And this is the way in which he was also happy to make amends for the wrong that he had done, and he fulfilled his obligation, and also the whole family was involved. And this is a kind of restorative justice that we envisage, that would not stigmatize the offenders, at the same time provide what the victim needs from the system. So when you look at it, it provides all the goals of the restorative justice system are restitution. You need to make amends, and you need reform the individual. So this is another case that that happened in another town called in Kanyakumari district nearby. So here there was theft of a small gold ornament in a little hamlet. So there was no one who left the hamlet or who came in. So they decided that it was among the residents of that hamlet who had stolen this ornament. And instead of going off straight away to the police to file a case, they decided, the village head and the community, all of them participated, and they decided we know it's someone here who has taken it. So we'll give them a chance to return it. And to do this without labeling the person, it was decided that they put a drum of water in the center of the village, and everyone brings a lump of cow dung and drops it in. And whoever has taken the gold ornament places the ornament in the cow dung ball and drops it into the drum of water. So in the end, they found that ornament among that among all those, that cow dung in the water in the drum. So this was a wonderful way of not labeling that person. Whoever had done it, he might have been a young boy, and if he was labeled a thief, and if he had gone into the regular retributive system, he would have been, his future would have been damaged. So this is a way in which you don't stigmatize, and of course there is repentance and apology because he returned it, and you're trying to rehabilitate, and you're trying to heal the whole community, and they have to, they also realize that they should not be careless with their things, and they cannot expect everyone to not be tempted by this. These kind of things, these are the advantage of the restorative justice system, how everybody is involved and how everybody stands to win something or the other, and they're not bitter at the end of it. So this is another incident that came to my mind when I was thinking of this, preparing for this webinar today. And also, what this restorative justice should do, it should invite full participation and consensus of everybody involved. This is another case when I was in the USS Fulbright Scholar we had to deal with in with restorative justice in Charlotte. This was in a school nearby where there was a basketball court and a few boys who were not selected onto the team. They were very frustrated, so they decided to damage the whole basketball team and the pole, and the whole team, the whole field in the morning was damaged. So of course the complaint was filed, and then it was referred to this restorative justice model, and there was a mediation, and the school authorities and everyone came to the table and
giving such a lucid introduction to the subject. And I may be wanting on my experiences of restorative justice in my service in the entire career of 36 and a half years. But anyway, we'll go along. Well, what I have seen over the last 36 and a half years is that the system lays a lot of emphasis on the actions of the state when it comes to crime. The state believes that the victim's harm or victim's interest rests with the state, and state knows best how to compensate the victim by delivering justice in the prevalent system that we have today. Of course, there are a few changes here and there. Well, the victim per se, I have often asked, victim per se does not have any say in the system. Now, later, I think a section was in, if you look at the 2019 data released by NCRB, 5 million new FIRs, new criminal cases, are registered every year, and equal number of people are arrested. Mind you, we arrest 5.2 million people in a year. Look at the burden that we put on the system. And you cannot provide policemen at this rate to arrest people every now and then, every minute. You cannot do it. And similarly, you cannot have courts in every corner, every mohalla or every street of the city, or A, B. They were introduced in our CRPC, enabling plea bargaining. I have been discussing I have been going to the Judicial Academy and the National Law University in Simla, and I've been raising this issue. What holds you back from implementing or from experimenting with plea bargaining, which has been provided now at the trial stage? It can be introduced, which will take a lot of pressure off the courts. I mean, I've been talking to the public prosecutors also. Somehow, the legal fraternity, the lawyer and the bench, they seem to be having some kind of aversion to this, and this has not gone forward, which would have sorted out a number of cases, a number of cases, like the section itself says that cases which have maximum punishment of 7 years can go for plea bargaining. So that is somehow not happening. That has not happened. And the other recommendation of the committee was, I think it would have been a game changer, and I would still plead for that. It suggested differential penal code. That in terms of that's a social offences code, like the offences of civil nature, purely of the civil nature. Then the correctional offences code, where probation and some conditional sentencing could take place. Economic offences, those could come in, and then the Indian Penal Code could also be retained for hard crimes. Now, another issue was the capacity building for the police. I mean, when I was learning my ropes as a police officer, I found that those police officers in the field were admired, who, before registering the FIR, sat with both the parties, listened to them, tried to sort out the issue, and then would reach a samjhauta. As in my state or North India it is called, they would reach a consensus. Okay, sir, if this is done, we don't want a registration of a case. All the parties went away happy. I think that is what now we want to formalize. This used to happen, but with that there were a number of problems. The system, the retributive system, it gives unbridled power to the police and scope for manipulation. So there was, unless and until we evolve systems with accountability, like in the prisons. Now I'm looking after the prisons. Like in the prisons, we have some kiosks installed where we keep people informed. We have our own in-house radio system where we inform people that, okay, Mr. So-and-so, your next hearing will be on this date. Does the victim get to know about that? No. So that is where the problem comes in. But some good things have happened. As I said, plea bargaining has come in, though not much is being done, at least not in my state and in several other states that I checked. But I think slowly it should become the order of the day. Like in the JJ Act. JJ Act has been wonderful. There is a problem of organizations, and with the participation of the government agencies are now openly talking about it. There is research going on these things. So I think we are building a good base, a springboard for India to launch into a good restorative system. When he said the growth, I see a lot of possibility of this into various fields. Like I find some economic offenses, I get some cases of Negotiation of Instruments Act, local and special laws. A check bounced. The person is not able to pay. How much was to be paid? ₹1 lakh. He could not pay, sentence for 6 months. The government's cost of carrying that person in prison itself is ₹1 lakh for 6 months. So what are we doing? Who is getting, is the victim getting his money back? No. Is the person getting an opportunity? Then I made an off-the-cuff suggestion to one of the judicial officers in the High Court. I said, why don't you do one thing while pass an order that when they come to the prison, they should be mandatorily working in one of the factories, and whatever.
And the Parliamentary Standing Committee urging to consider an alternate approach. Or restorative justice approach may not fit in all cases, but it is, the evidence is so strong, and Dr. Beulah, you so lucidly highlighted all that evidence, and we did make that submission. But I must say that now, because of this whole public sentiment, and unless we have really good evidence, we have good practice on the ground, where we are showing that difference, we at the Enfold Proactive Health Trust are on a journey, and I'd like to share some aspects of that journey and the insights the entire team has gained. I would say, like to Enfold Trust as an organization that established in 2001 with a focus on safety and well-being of children, and on child sexual abuse, the healing of child sexual abuse, and therefore engaging with restorative practices from an organization who believes that the survivors and their needs need to be highlighted, need to be responded. We all as a society need to respond to that. To embed a restorative justice team within Enfold sounded perfect. So we have a small restorative practice team with Swagata Raha leading our team, and colleagues Shivangi Puri and Neet D'Souza and myself working primarily within the observation homes and on restorative justice. We also have other colleagues, Preeti, Sunalini and Malini, who are engaging in this work. Let me just, Seema, will you be sharing my slide for me, please?
Yeah, just a second.
I could share, but I'm not used to webinar with the WebEx mode, so approach to crime. I think Beulah has done justice to that in so much detail. So I will just move on into just highlighting the fact that the Honorable Supreme Court has actually asserted that restorative justice is something that needs to be practiced. And I quote from one of the judgments, Exploitation of Children in Orphanages in the State of Tamil Nadu versus Union of India, where the Honorable Court says there cannot be any meaningful rehabilitation, particularly of a child in conflict with law, who is also a child in need of care and protection. Such a brilliant statement which recognizes that all children in conflict with law are also victims of various structural other problems in which the child is fallen out of the safety, is also a victim of not having been rights being made. Very often, these children were all children of care and protection officers who are actually dealing with cases of petty and serious offences at the police station. And why do I say that? Because as per the Juvenile Justice Act, in the rules, it's an FIR should not be registered for certain cases in terms of petty and serious offences. The child need not be arrested but apprehended but produced, asked to come before the Juvenile Justice Board. And there is also a possibility of disposition at the first hearing itself in petty cases. So this principle of diversion is really based, if you look at more detail into the Juvenile Justice Act Section 315, recognizes this principle. In Rule 8.1, there is no of the system. Work with this child and enable this child, the child's family, significant others, to say what is it that this child needs to do in order to be able to demonstrate that he is reforming from within and showing accountability. And this space here, a restorative justice process, could definitely be facilitated as part of that planning process. In terms of out of the system, of course, there are certain cases that don't get reported to the police at all, and here there is a scope. It is a case and not yet a crime, or also cases, as I said, in terms of they're finally disposed of the children's court. To sit with this person who's been.
Buloji has been conducting series of seminars, talking at different levels, talking. And Arlinji conducted, their group has conducted very good. He says they brought out the different issues. And Somesh clearly mentioned, though there are provisions in the law, they are not being adopted. They are not being accepted. What is the action plan? Are we to continue to speaking like this, or can we do something? What is that we can do? That is what perhaps I would be very happy, all the panelists and also speakers, if you can send us your brief inputs. We'd like to put them together and maybe sit again to talk of the action plan. We know restorative justice is good. We know our number of cases are piling up. We also realize that the entire criminal justice system is breaking down. Honestly, no one has faith in any of either the police or the courts or the prisons. Everything is gone. We are just carrying on, talking about it. So my humble request to every one of you is, can there be an action plan? What is that we can do? How do we do it? Where Urvi Vikram Charitable Trust, or rather our National Center for Adolescents, as Maharaji said, for 3 years we worked in Tihar jail. Only 1 year we got funding, and the other 2 years on our own steam we worked. Results are amazing. The type of changeover in these children, the repentance they found, we noticed in them. They all wanted to go out and resolve their, interact with the other parties and sort it out. But we are trying to accommodate, we are trying to in the limited way, but in a big way, what is that we can do? Right? Thank you very much, friends, for all of you sparing your valuable time and be with us. I'm sure, we hope we will be continuing these dialogues. Somebody from Coimbatore, somebody from Bombay, someone from Shimla, and here it is from Delhi. Thank you. And thank all the participants. I would request, I'm sorry we could not give you adequate time, but you said your queries.